In 2015, the Center for Medical Progress released a video in which you stated, quote, "I'm like, oh my God, I get it. When the skull is broken, that's really sharp. I get it. I understand why people are talking about getting that skull out, that culvarium." Culvarium being an incomplete skull. When abortion has crushed the skulls of babies to kill them, what physical risks are there for the baby?
So, Congressman, thank you for the question. It allows me to clarify that the media products you're referring to stoked a massive uptick in violence. Those heavily edited, misleadingly edited media products caused 3 murders and 9 woundings in Colorado Springs in 2015.
The question was about the baby and the skull crushing that is, I think, a direct quote attributed to you.
Well, the folks who distributed those media products may have attributed something to me. I can't speak to.
So, true or false, did you say that? I'm like, oh my God, I get it. When the skull is broken, that's really sharp. Did you say that?
It's impossible to know, Congressman.
Would you have said that? Is that something you would have said?
I don't know, Congressman.
You don't know. You don't know if you talked about the crushing of the skull of a baby. You don't remember having said something like that.
What I do,
I'm pretty confident I've never said something like that. I'm quite confident my colleagues here have never said something like that. Have you ever said something about crushing the skull of the baby, particularly in that kind of a setup?
I believe, Congressman, that we all came here today to agree that violence is never an appropriate response to policy differences.
That seems pretty violent, the crushing of the skull of a baby. I think that actually is the definition of violence. And I think the question here is whether or not we are going to acknowledge and recognize that reality and the extent to which now the federal government has been weaponized against the people who want to acknowledge that reality. That's the question. Mr. Houck has stood up and said, I'd like to recognize the reality of the violence against a baby. And by the way, the violence against the mother who's been sold a myth by radical leftists in the name of baby killing. They've been sold a myth that it is somehow healthy and good for them or better than for them.
Look at her sidestep. The undercover journalist behind the Center for Medical Progress, which first exposed the massive buying and selling of aborted baby body parts industry, has been smeared by activists like Ms. Camp, as we just heard, for the better part of a decade. Litigation after litigation has been brought against David Daleiden, whom we've had the honor of interviewing on this show. But now this week, his attorneys are asking the Supreme Court to intervene. Joining us now to discuss is the Honorable Peter Breen, Executive Vice President and Head of Litigation for the Thomas More Society. Thanks for being here tonight, Peter.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
Great. So you're leading David's defense. Explain for us what this writ is that your society filed with the Supreme Court earlier this week.
Well, and so what we're doing is asking the U.S. Supreme Court to lift the gag order that the lower courts put on David. Videos that made statements like what the congressman noted. They're enjoined right now. David took footage of an abortion trade show, 2 abortion trade shows actually, from the National Abortion Federation, and that material, in any other context, any other undercover journalist would be allowed to release it. But here the courts enjoined it. So we are gagged right now. David is gagged. He was also fined $6 million for the attorney's fees of National Abortion Federation. We're asking the Supreme Court to please reverse this. Take a good hard look at it. Because if this is the precedent that gets set, you may say, well, abortion's not my issue. I care about something else, political corruption, animal rights, anything. But if this is the precedent that's set, your favorite issue, your favorite undercover journalists may also be silenced, because there are high-priced lawyers on the other side that desperately want to stop good undercover journalists like David and others from speaking. So we have got to get the Supreme Court to give us relief. Otherwise, the results would be extremely chilling to our First Amendment rights and undercover journalism.